Sensalon by Mac Devlin. Free yourself with Sensalon, a soothing female voice spoke from the view screen embedded in the wall of the subway station. Calix was slumped on a bench, sipping an energy drink and taking massive hits from his vapor stick. Udi, his best friend, was lounging on the other end of the bench. There was a long string of drool trailing from the corner of his mouth. Calix looked over at the view screen where a family was frolicking through a field, big smiles painted on their faces. It was absurd. No one smiled while on Sensalon. The whole purpose of the drug was to treat SOS, sensory overload syndrome, so it dulled the emotions and numbed the senses. The family would not have been holding hands or smiling or frolicking. They would each be in individual rooms, sitting in the dark, not interacting, certainly not smiling. Ask your doctor about Sensalon, the soothing female voice said. Side effects may include uncontrolled diarrhea, anal leakage, vomiting, depression, anxiety, sensory overload, stroke, heart attack, and, in some cases, even death. Why would you treat sensory overload with a drug that causes sensory overload? Calix said to Udi. Udi did not respond. He was deep in a painkiller binge, which Calix knew. The question had been rhetorical. Calix looked around at the other people in the subway station. There were only 4 or 5 waiting for the train, and most of them were staring at their phones. One seemed to be gazing at the empty spaces in the universe. Then he noticed a woman cradling a bundle to her chest. The sight reminded him of a mother holding a baby, but it couldn't possibly be an actual baby. Since the fertility rates had dropped to 0, babies were created in labs and raised in the government creches for the first 4 years of their lives. Something about ensuring positive development. Yada, 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 Calix said. Udi looked over at him and muttered, I keep her hair in a locket. Creepy, Calix said. Udi was always saying crap like that when he was in a stupor. When he was blitzed, he wasn't much of a conversationalist, but that didn't mean he was silent. Sometimes he released a torrent of nonsense. It probably made sense to someone somewhere, but Calix never knew what his friend was on about. I keep her hair in a locket, Udi said. I keep it here in my left side pocket. Udi patted the left pocket of his black windbreaker. Calix wondered if there was actually a locket in there. He didn't think so. Calix had known Udi for most of his life, but he didn't really know Udi. It was hard to get to know someone who was constantly blitzed on one drug or another. Yeah, Calix said. You tell me this every time you're deep in the morph. It's not even a good poem. I keep her hair in a locket, Udi repeated. I keep it here in my left side pocket. The train came screeching into the station. Calix waited for the people to unload. There were only about a dozen passengers, such was the case most days. Everyone worked remotely, and whatever they needed from the outside world was delivered by drones. Standing, Calix took a final slug of his energy drink and tossed it in a nearby rubbish bin. He then grabbed Udi's arm, pulling his friend to his feet and leading him into the subway car. After pushing Udi into a seat, Calix flopped down next to him. The woman with the bundle sat down directly across from them, still looking down at her cargo with affection. At least Calix thought it was affection. These days, there was no telling because most people were on a spectrum of medications or street narcotics. You had to be to survive in the world as it was. The woman glanced up at Calix, studied him for a moment, then returned her attention to the bundle. She dipped her finger into an opening toward the top and then giggled. Normally, he avoided talking to anyone, but her actions were curious enough for him to neglect his avoidance rule. What is that? He said. Not realizing Calix was addressing her, she continued to smile and coo at her bundle. Udi groaned and put his head between his knees. What is that? Calix said. He stomped his foot at her to draw her attention. After fussing over her bundle, she finally looked up at him, then glanced over at Udi, who was rocking back and forth now, humming an uneven tune. "Is he all right?" the woman said. The question surprised Calix. He expected her to be blitzed, which would have made her attention to the mysterious bundle more understandable. "Morph binge," Calix said. "He's 3 days in." She nodded, as if encountering someone on a painkiller binge wasn't uncommon. It wasn't. Since the babies stopped coming, narcotic consumption had been a socially acceptable and legal form of recreation. "What is that?" Calix asked again. "The thing you're holding." "Oh," she said, "it's nothing." "It has to be something," Calix said. "I've never seen anyone pay so much attention to nothing." He looked at his friend. Drool pooled on the floor between Udi's feet. "At least not anyone sober," he said. "You think I'm sober?" she said, a tempestuous smile spreading across her face. "That's a far shot these days, isn't it?" "I suppose it is," Calix said. He took a massive hit from his vapor stick to emphasize the point, exhaling the cloud toward the ceiling. The subway car rocked forward as it began to move. Udi leaned so far to one side that Calix reached out to keep him from toppling over. He righted his friend, who quickly resumed his uncontrolled drooling. Maybe it was the cannabis oil in his vapor, but when Calix looked down at the pool of drool, he found it kind of beautiful. The fluorescent light was reflected in the thick liquid like the moonlight on the surface of a country pond. "Are you night workers?" the woman asked. "No," Calix said. "I design games from home. Udi doesn't do much of anything." "I keep her hair in a locket," Udi said. "I keep it here in my left side pocket." The woman ignored the couplet and said, "So, where are you going?" "Where are you going?" Calix asked. "I'm donating eggs," she said without hesitation. "Doing my part." "Perpetuating the species," Calix said. "So what is it?" "It's nothing," she said. She clamped the opening in the bundle closed. There was a fierce look of protection on her face. What she held was the most important object in her universe. "I won't ask again," Calix said. Leaning back in his seat, he pulled up the hood of his sweatshirt, his face disappearing into the small shadow. They rode in silence for a few moments. Then Udi suddenly shot to his feet. "I keep her hair in a locket," he yelled. "I keep it here in my left side pocket." The lights flickered, then the whole train groaned. Calix felt his body lift from the seat. He was flying toward the front of the car. He slammed into one of the support poles in the middle of the aisle. Everything went dark. He felt his body spinning through the air. At one point, his legs lifted above his head and he flipped completely over. There was a stabbing pain in his leg as he slammed against the subway car floor. At least he thought it was the floor. Then the lights came back on. Calix realized that the entire subway car was now upside down. There were broken bits of metal and plastic everywhere. Some severed wires sparked with electricity. Calix felt the stabbing pain in his leg again. He checked for wounds. A 6-inch piece of metal had pierced his right thigh. He touched it, realizing immediately how stupid that was. Pain rocketed up his right side. When he finally regained his senses, he struggled to his feet. His first instinct was to pull the metal from his leg. He realized that might be a bad idea. Not only would it cause a whole new kind of pain, it was probably keeping him from bleeding out. Carefully, very carefully, he picked his way through the wreckage to where Udi and the woman had been sitting. He saw a single hand sticking out from underneath one of the dislodged seats. Using his shoulder, he pushed it aside, another shock of pain rushing through him. He found Udi underneath, his friend's head twisted at an unnatural angle, blood and spittle dripping from his lips, eyes wide in a sickening death stare. Calix expected to be overwhelmed with emotion, but he felt nothing. Udi had been his best friend in the world. He should have felt something, sadness or even terror from seeing someone mangled in such a way. Yet there was nothing. He was numb. Udi had something silver clenched in his left hand. Before Calix could find out what it was, he registered a soft whimpering a few feet away. Moving aside more debris, he found the woman lying face down. He thought maybe she was injured, but then she moved, rolling over on her side, revealing the flattened bundle on the ceiling beneath her. He pulled back, terrified that he would find crushed remains. "What happened?" the woman asked. "I think there was an accident," Calix said. Pulling her to her feet, he checked her for injuries. She seemed a little dazed, but otherwise fine. Seeing nothing immediately wrong with her, he went back to Udi's corpse. He was careful to avoid causing himself more pain as he bent over and removed the silver object from his friend's dead hand. It was a circular locket about the size of a thumb tip. As often as his friend had repeated the couplet about the locket, Calix had always thought it was some drug-induced fabrication or delusion. Releasing the clasp, he found a length of red hair curled inside. Then the tears came. He knew it was the wrong time to break down, so he took a deep, ragged breath and wiped the moisture from his cheeks. He shoved the locket deep inside his own left side pocket. He turned back to the woman. She was squatting next to the bundle, making a soft, keening noise. Then her body shook as she released a heart-wrenching sob. Calix stood over her, watching as she unwrapped it. He didn't want to see what had happened to the contents, but he felt like he needed to. "My baby," the woman said. When she finished unwrapping the bundle, what Calix saw caused another surge of pain, but not from his leg this time. Something in his mind was ready to snap. There was nothing inside. It was just a blanket. He took a step back from the woman, studying her as she emotionally deteriorated. He thought about how Udi spent most of his life in a complete fog, and that was exactly where Calix wanted to be, at the very bottom of a drug-induced rabbit hole. Any other reality, including the twisted reality of a psychotic break, had to be better than this one.